Get ready for a no BS approach to health and fitness. This is NBS Fitness Radio.
All right, welcome back to NBS Fitness Radio. I am here with Brandon Artiles. Brandon is the wrestling coach at ECS, and we're here to kind of talk about not only the physical nature of wrestling, but also kind of the mental aspect of wrestling, how that impacts kids. So Brandon, say hello to everyone, and then kind of just introduce yourselves, give us your background.
Hello, everyone, but nailed it. Artiles.
Yeah. Artiles.
We practiced that before we got this thing going. First and foremost, thanks for having me on. This is like a real treat for me. I'm usually on the other side of the mic interviewing somebody, so I'm happy to be the subject today. And so thanks for giving me the opportunity to share. Excited to be in this seat. But my background with wrestling, I started when I was in 7th grade, and it was like, when I think back on my life, you know, where I'm at like right now, it is by far one of the most fundamental aspects of my growth, you know, as a person, and I learned so much from it. And my, you know, inspiration to coach now is just to pass it along. I think that's what we strive for. I think when God gives us opportunities and talents and gifts, it's like, you know, am I just going to keep this experience for myself, or how can I use this to the benefit of others? So when I got the youth program started in 2018 at ECS, that was really the catalyst for it, is just wanting to be able to use that as a means to pass something on.
What sparked that? Because I graduated from ECS. We did not have wrestling at the time. What sparked the interest within that community to start that program?
Well, what it boiled down to is me just kind of taking inventory of my giftings and what I had to offer. And I will say something special about the ECS community, which I will brag on a lot. I can't help myself, but I will say is they're just very receptive. And if you bring an idea to the table, you know, as I did to the athletic director at the time, he was like, sure. He said it wasn't this idea of like, nah, that's not for us. It was just like, let's go. Let's see if we can make this happen. And so just having it be receptive and received well, that was all the foundation I needed to just kind of run with it.
How long were you on staff prior to that?
I wasn't. I've only been on staff at ECS going back to last school year. So I started on staff in this role of annual fund director and director of advancement in the past year or so. So that was all volunteer driven. And that was, again, going back to that point, is ECS does something where it just makes you want to go, hey, how can I contribute? How can I be a part of this? How can I be a part of the community and part of the mission? And that's a part of my inventory of that was, hey, I know how to wrestle. You don't have a wrestling program. So what can we do about that? And they were always very courteous about like saying, all right, let's find a way to make this happen. Had some coaches on staff there that went and acquired mats. So we didn't have to spend a dime on mats. I'll just go ahead and say God will provide, and we were able to get secure some wrestling mats so that we were able to kind of use and get the program going.
That's awesome. All right, so when you look back on your youth as a wrestler, like what are the moments that stick out as impactful to you?
Well, I would say it's hard to boil it down to moments. There's particular, it's more of the reflection on those moments. When you're going through a particular training session, you know you're going through it, and it's hard. But then it's the reflection of, man, I endured that. I kind of overcame that. I did something hard, which means, what does that mean for me and my growth and development? It's like, it means I'm capable of probably more than I want to even give myself credit for, or at least when you're, experience certain circumstances in life, you realize, I'm made of something stronger here, and I can persevere through this. And so it's kind of the reflection of that. It's like when you're thinking about, when I was competing for UT Chattanooga as a freshman and sophomore in college, Chattanooga's, I don't know if you're familiar with the topography of Chattanooga. A lot of hills, very steep. And so when you're running up a hill, and that's, and you're only halfway through your conditioning session, you're like, what is the purpose of all this? I'm training myself for competition. That's very important, but it's also really just setting this tone in your life that you are, you're up for that kind of challenge, and you want to be pushed.
That's awesome. When did you get the bug? Like when Was it like
Man.
was it the first session? Like, what other things were you doing? Because
that is such a good question, and this is so. I mean, I even witnessed this, with some other kids, in particular, my nephew, who was now like 20, 21 years old, but even when he was going through growing up wrestling. But for me, it's like you would look at me after my 7th and 8th grade years and just be like, yeah, I could understand if you wanted to quit right now. I can't even recall winning a match.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things. I don't know why you kept coming back. I guess there was something in me just to keep coming back.
Yeah.
You had I guess I just enjoyed the sport that much. And I guess that's what it boils down to. There was just something about the sport where I will say this. We do live in a culture and society right now. And I'll get on this soapbox where, we are constantly telling boys in particular, but telling just, hey, calm down. Don't do that. Don't push.
Yeah.
Always just trying. And God designed us to kind of be aggressive creatures. I mean, especially boys, and we got to have that outlet. And so I know that much. I know I enjoy that outlet of, hey, you're in this room for the next hour and a half. You do all the pushing you want. You're doing all the shoving you want. Yeah, you're probably going to have it put right back on you. Yeah. But I mean, I just enjoyed that. I had fun with that.
You'll appreciate this. So I have a 5-year-old, 3.5-year-old.
Oh yeah. So a lot of wrestling in there.
A lot of wrestling. And so the other day we were just in the front yard and they just looked at each other and go, "You want to wrestle?" They just started wrestling. And so it's just us there. Yeah. I'm like sitting in a chair, like watching them wrestle, but at the same time being like, too close to the driveway, get back in the grass.
Yeah.
Get your hands off of his eyes. Like I'm just refereeing. And my wife, so I grew up with a little brother.
Yeah.
I obviously grew up doing like football and that kind of stuff, but my wife did not. So she pulls into the driveway and is like, what are you doing? Like, so you're encouraging this? I was like, 100%. I was like, of course. It's like, I'm just facilitating a process for them to do it safely.
Exactly.
Like they're going to do it. Let me just help them do it safely.
Right on. And I'm just going to let you know what's going to be fun in the next couple of years. Your wife will become numb to it and actually just be like, whatever. Yeah. and she'll actually celebrate it. And that's been, we have 3 boys. I have a 15, 11, and 8-year-old. And, my dear wife, Heather, she probably have had that same response. And now she'll hear all sorts of ruckus upstairs and be like, just roll her eyes at it and keep going. I mean, there has to be bloodshed at this rate to get her to respond to anything.
It's like I try to just give them rules of engagement, like nothing to the face, no weapons, like
fair,
that kind of stuff. Other than that, like go for it, dudes. Like get it out.
But that is a part of it, as I think that there is just kind of, and it's not for everybody. Yeah. But yes, some of us are wired. It's like I'm good with that, and at least with the wrestling, you create that environment. Yeah, it's on a mat. That's good. That's nice to be able to fall on and roll around on. So that's good there, and you got padded walls. So just adding structure to, some physical activity that we're going to engage in. You kind of made that reference. That's one of the first things we do as humans. We're gonna wrestle around. Yeah. We're gonna figure this stuff out, test each other. Yeah. And that's what I like doing. Is like, hey, let's provide a framework for this. To work through that.
Yeah, I remember going through puberty as a young male in the 90s and early 2000s. And kind of trying to figure out, like, what's a guy? And I was constantly being told how skinny I was. Yeah. It was people like, look how small your calves are. You're so skinny there. Because I just was a beanpole at that point. And I remember kind of thinking, like, in reference to Rocky or Arnold Schwarzenegger or whoever being like, well, like, I don't want to be skinny David. I want to be like, Jack David. And I think I've always been kind of on the more aggressive spectrum for like everything. In high school, still now, like I like heavy metal music. I like intensity. I like competitiveness. And then finding football was like, this is perfect for me because I get to hit people and I get to go 100 miles an hour. And like, it was just that it was a very defining moment as far as like figuring out who I am and how I fit in this world, having that outlet there. And I think something that's interesting about wrestling is I mean, it's got, as far as I can see, is probably one of the most intense sports available to youth. From a training perspective, from a competition perspective, it's just you.
Yep.
It's on a mat in front of other people, and you're engaged the entire time.
Yep.
Like at any point you disengage, you've lost.
Yeah.
It's not like you can play right field and kind of go out for a whole lot of innings and nothing happened. You know, you can kind of run up and down a basketball court, get the ball, pass it to someone else. But wrestling it's 100% you. So when, like, what's maybe some defining characteristics you see kind of coming across in wrestlers, either that pulls them to the sport or that gets developed in them through the sport?
Well, I'm about to get into probably the one of those questions was like kind of chicken or the egg. It's like, does wrestling develop mental toughness, or is somebody already just have that kind of mental toughness and they're just leaning into that even further and they can grow that? I just think wrestling is one of those things. And talking about like my experience, 7th, 8th grade, not winning a single match in my memory. You know, I guess I had some mental toughness there to persevere through that and see that there was something more to be gained from that. But I do think, you know, to your point about, you know, that experience and the intensity of wrestling. I mean, you go to a youth wrestling tournament, I think other kids cry at sporting events, but not like at a wrestling tournament. Dude, like you get beat in a wrestling tournament, it's so personal.
Yeah.
And when it is that one-on-one combat, I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at mixed martial arts today, the best discipline that I think just about everybody would vouch for is wrestling. You are able to control and dictate the pace of a match, the place of a fight. And so that goes into when you're in wrestling. Of course, it's not escalating to, you know, mixed martial arts, but you're in hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
And so you're forced to deal with a lot of uncomfortable situations, and you have to find your way and work your way through those things. Yeah. And I would say even before you even get to the technical aspect of it, it is that mental training of just fighting through the discomfort. Yeah. And you know, having somebody get there. I mean, it's illegal to like get hands in the face and all that, but inevitably you're going to get a hand. You're going to get you get a palm to the forehead. You're going to people are, you know, popping your head, pushing you around. And you have to be able to respond to that well. And I've seen on all sides of the spectrum, kids just flee from that and not want anything to do with it. And we have to reconcile and say, all right, this probably isn't for you. Yeah. You know, and then there's others that just can't get enough of it. Yeah. And they're, and they feed off of it. And so that is kind of one of those aspects of just being okay with the physicality of it. And then, you know, figuring out how to impose your will. Yeah. And that's kind of the fun part of when you start working with these kids and seeing that light bulb go off. Sorry to go on here, but I mean, my coach asked me, my high school coach asked me when I was graduating college, he said, hey, have you ever thought about coaching wrestling? You know, because I'd go back and visit, you know, when I was in college, I'd visit the high school wrestling room and work with some of the guys. But I never even really considered it. And I'm glad I didn't consider it then, because it would have been like for selfish reasons. It would have been like, oh, I want to be a coach and I want to do this and I want to have success for that reason. I think the way God kind of worked in my life, the opportunity to coach now is it's about the other kids. It's about, you know, how I can leverage this sport so that they can grow in that confidence and grow with that and learn the value of being uncomfortable, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Yeah. You know, so that kind of deal.
How do you coach that? Like how do you communicate that necessity to the kids that you're working with? Because I mean, every kid at some point is probably going to hit like that moment where they do get beat bad in front of everyone, or they just can't seem to, you know, they're stuck in a situation where like this guy fully controls me, or I'm having a bad day, and then on top of that, I'm gonna have to do this insanely difficult conditioning. Yeah, like how do you communicate that to them to help them grow?
Honest answer, still learning. Yeah, I'm still learning this, and it is like a kind of a case by case basis, and that is the challenge of a coach, where you got athletes from across the spectrum, where you're dealing with guys that are they're there because they eat, drink, breathe, sleep it, and then you got other guys, just looking for something physical to do, and checking boxes and all that stuff. And so you are trying to work with that. But for the kids that are really committed, you have to allow them to keep it in perspective of, you lost this match or you had a bad day in practice. This is, at the end of the day, this is a laboratory, and we're just testing stuff out here. And, you don't want to, you're not defined by that one match. And that's the chess match of it all, is like, all right, you're going to run into some buzzsaws, some hammers out there that are just like, I don't have an answer for you. Yeah. It's like, sorry, dude. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, there's something there. We'll review film. We'll review what happened in the match, and you just make these tweaks. And that's the fun part of going back into the wrestling room, trying to diagnose what went on. Yeah. And then, all right, there's a technique for that. Yeah. There's a move for that. There's a counter for that. And then just trying to walk them through, seeing, and I guess that's, it has to be bigger than wrestling. Yeah. It has to be about life. Yeah. It has to be about, hey, in life, you're going to encounter things and you can be defeated, throw your hands in the air, get upset and discouraged. But what's more productive is, take that discouragement and let's use that for productivity. Yeah. All right, let's find the answer. There's a way out.
It's a interesting perspective to have now. Essentially having trained hard since I was 13, 14, so 25 years of training. Is that as hard as some of the hardest workouts or events that stick out in my mind. I literally just did the hardest thing I've ever done in my life 2 weeks ago. But even as hard as that was, I'm like, man,
were you climbing a mountain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just.
And I'm just like, it pales in comparison to the difficulty I face in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
It's just like,
it does.
And so it's like I say physical challenge are like the safest area for you to develop the life skills to deal with difficulty. You can't really safely implement true life struggle on a daily basis. You don't want to. So this is like a safe space that you can experience it on some level. And so
it's practice.
Yeah. I see that with perspective. And so like when you're trying to take that to like a 7th grader who's just now kind
of course, that's not what they're getting.
They're not getting that.
Hey, I'm teaching you life lessons here. It's not about don't get me wrong. It's not about that.
I just say like it is so kind of beautiful to kind of look back on that. And that's kind of one of those things I think as a dad or as a coach or whoever, it's just like, man, I got to kind of hold myself accountable to teaching you this stuff and just staying true to it, even though I know like you're not going to get this for like 10, 20 years, so.
Well, that's such the hard part. And as you just, hit on with the, fatherhood, even as a coach, is like the fruit of what you're doing now, you may never see. Yeah. You may never see it with your own eyes. And I've been trying to, and again, even my high school coach, and I'll brag on him, his name's Pat Simpson. And again, I'll just reflect on the idea of like, as I'm going through high school and I was blessed to be a part of 2 state championship teams, and I was able to win a state championship as a senior. And, in my kind of immaturity, you're like, oh man, that's cool. And I'm pretty good and all that stuff. And now when the hindsight, you're like, dude, how stinking blessed were you to be a part of a program that is, at Father Ryan High School is nationally renowned. It's multiple state championships. Long after I've gone, they're still winning. It had nothing to do with me. I was just fortunate to be there when I did and have that opportunity. And so Pat Simpson's created this great environment there. And just to be able to sit under him for 4 to 6 years and to see him in action and just like take the bits and pieces I have from him and just implement it in the small ways that I have. It's just that's the beauty of it. And I say all that to get to the point of, I don't think I ever expressed to him how grateful I was until, I got to see him a couple years ago at a tournament. I was like, you have no idea. Like, not a day goes by in my life where I'm not using something that I learned from you, or at least just just absorbed, from my experience in the wrestling room in high school.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's important to, make that, take advantage of those opportunities to let those people know of the impact that they had on you. Not just assume it. But at the same time, we, in my wildest imagination, that's what we live for as coaches is, whatever we're depositing right now, we hope that there's going to be some long-term benefit. Maybe I don't get to see it. Maybe I don't get to know about it, but you're just being faithful in that.
Yeah. Do your kids wrestle?
Oh man, that hurts.
Sore
that hurts. No, I'm kidding. I love them. My oldest, he gave it a good go.
Yeah.
Fifth grade year. His fifth grade year was the first year that we had the youth program at ACS, and he went out there and did it. Just one for him.
Yeah.
All good. He likes lacrosse. He likes some other stuff. He's swimming now, and he's doing great. But yeah, it wasn't one for him. My middle, he plays every sport he can get his hands on. Maybe he'll come back to it. He just doesn't have time for it. So he's super active. And my youngest though, Caleb, he's 8. Whether he knows it or not, dude's a wrestler. Dude's a wrestler, okay? Yeah. And he may, I think he'll find himself at some point on a wrestling mat because he competed a little bit last year and he seemed very comfortable. He was the kind of kid as a youth wrestler, I'm like, I wish I could have done that.
Yeah.
I wish I was that kid. Yeah.
All right. What is the ideal age to maybe introduce kids to wrestling, but then also how do you do it correctly without pushing them too far or going down the rabbit hole?
It's every kid's going to be different. And there's a fear, I think, of burnout in every sport.
Yeah.
I think there is I'm a big fan of multi-sport discipline. I think kids need to be exposed to different things. I think other sports complement, the development of athletes in different ways, and I think it all integrates into building stronger athletes overall. So I would just caution, making wrestling from an early time a singular focus for a kid and I'm just seeing the culture of all sports isn't just wrestling, but it's just like this year-round pursuit. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think you got to be careful with that. That said, I don't know what's going on in personal lives. I've seen kids follow that model, from probably the age of 9, 10, competing year round, and they have insane success. So if we're looking for success, in sports, then some results are undeniable, but at the same time, I don't know about the well-being of that kid or that individual as they grow and develop. To answer your question, I've kind of a school of thought of just take it slow. And at the end of the day, wrestling has some high-level techniques that can be that are useful. But at the end of the day, it's the simplest techniques that really win. If you watch the NCAA championships, is pretty much the only time NCAA wrestling gets the spotlight. ESPN will air it every March. You rarely see these exotic moves or anything. It's if my terminology is going to throw you off, it's just. But these are the basics: single leg takedown, double leg takedowns. From the bottom, you do from the bottom position, do a stand up, and then when you're on top, you're just a hammer. Looking for chicken wings, looking for half Nelsons, just applying maximum pressure. That's wrestling. And you throw in a cradle every now and again. That's about as exotic as it gets, because at that level there are no secret special moves that are going to really catch an opponent off guard. Most guys know it. So I say all that to get the point. I think if you're just really good at the basics and disciplined at building from there, I think a guy based on their athleticism, that they don't need to really get really super committed till 6th or 7th grade. And I'll probably, if anybody hears that and goes, I totally disagree, I'll own that and I'll defer. But I just think there's a lot of development but a lot of it has to do with, you mentioned puberty earlier. That's such a game changer.
Especially in middle school when everyone's at different stages.
Totally. Well, 7th grade, I'll go ahead and say, my lack of success, I mean, not to make excuses, but I'm wrestling. I'm some pudgy husky kid wrestling dudes with beards, and I'm like, I don't think I'm not going to be very good against that guy. Yeah. So, that's a part of it. And then all of a sudden freshman year rolls around and my body's changing. And, the same guy that was pinning me a year ago, I've kind of closed the gap on. Yeah. So that does play into it.
Yeah. That's, I'm very much of the same mindset of, not letting kids being single sport athletes early on. I think, and to me, the greatest danger is them finding their identity as that type sport athlete, because it's like, man, that goes away real quick. Yeah. Even if you're like the best in the world, it's still going away probably in your 20s or 30s. Yeah. I also hate the idea of the relationship it causes between parents and kids, where like, you're an investment I expect a return on. You need to earn, I've invested this so you can go earn a college scholarship. Yep. And if you look at like human development, the kids who are typically the best in middle school don't always turn out to be the best in high school, because they are early developers. Yeah. They've squeezed as much juice as they're going to squeeze out early on in life. Versus the kid who has a longer developmental period, he's probably not going to peak till late in high school. And that was me. Like I continue to grow and continue to get bigger. I didn't really fall into the position I eventually played, literally to my senior year. Yeah. And so it's also hard to know what you're going to find enjoyment in, what you're going to find, success at that sport in, until you've tried a bunch of stuff. And it's very risky. There's the chance of success is low and the risk is high if you just kind of go, well, as a sixth grader or whatever, this is my thing I'm going to do forever. Yeah. And I get it and it's hard, because at that age, that's kind of what you do. You're like, I'm going to be a cowboy when I grow up, or I'm going to be a policeman, or I'm going to be a professional football player. That's just what it's going to be. You kind of just like how you act. So as a parent, it's hard to balance out, like, my kid only wants to do this thing, and like I could go down that path, but also like how do I say, hey, look, like we need to have a little more balance as well. So I get it. It's tough.
I do think there's some development. It's good for a kid. Like, let's say you can take this in any sport. Let's say he's a fantastic wrestler. He's a good wrestler. All right, great. Be as successful as you can be, but also play something where you're not the star, or you're not the best, or you're just kind of a part. You're a cog, and you're seeing somebody else's shine. So I think that there's something important about that too. Is just so that kid doesn't develop into thinking they got to be it all the time. They can, and there's some humility that does need it. And I will say that's another point I wanted to get to, just about wrestling, and that I kind of missed on earlier. Is just like, man, you will be humbled. I do think that's one of the great development factors of the sport. And that you touched on that one-on-one aspect. There's nowhere to hide. It's not like you can say, you hear it after games all the time. I was coaching in a 7-8-year-old football game like last night. You heard it all at halftime. He didn't do this, and that kid didn't do that. And it's like, there's none of that in wrestling. It's like, what, you didn't do it, and you weren't ready for it. And so you do, have to take radical ownership over, over preparation and making sure you're ready for that.
One of the things I think is so unique about wrestling or judo or jiu-jitsu is that, like, if you're a pretty athletic person, if you grew up playing sports, if you are as a youth an athletic person, you can kind of bounce around between like a lot of the team sports pretty easily. If you're a pretty athletic football player, like, you can go shoot some hoops, or you can probably throw a baseball, like play a little soccer. Like, you can just kind of jump in and have, like, just use what you got and do a pretty good job. But unless there's just some dramatic size difference or strength difference, if you have no wrestling background, and you go against someone who has any wrestling background, you're gonna get whooped. Yep. Straight whooped.
And like, you're saying, that chip on the wrestler's shoulder, we take a whole lot of pride in that, brother.
I have a buddy who he was a college judo.
Yeah.
He's a black belt judo, black belt jiu-jitsu, and he was like, "Yeah, come and do this." And I was like, "All right." Well. Clearly, I knew what I was facing from like a reality standpoint. But I had no chance.
Yeah.
But I was probably 80 pounds bigger than him at the time. And we're kind of like starting off in a bit of a wrestling kind of situation. And he just essentially just flipped me up on my back and made me feel like I was in a washing machine. And it just like landed. I was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
It was just like clear. It's just one of those clear indications of how impactful those skills are. If you on somebody who does not have those skills.
Well, there is technical aspects to it where, I mean, it's not a magic trick. It's just knowing how to use your body, knowing how to use leverage, knowing, drop your hips, get a little bit lower. People always have a tendency to get high. I mean, that's the number one thing you got to break athletes of when they first start the sport is they think everything happens up here. It's like, nah, it's down here. You got to lower that level. And we love introducing people to the sport. Be like, oh, you think okay, let's have fun with that. But and then hopefully that they'll stick around and want to learn. Hey, how did you do that? Because I want to learn how to do that. Yeah.
That was different. How to do that. I can see wrestling being super beneficial in football, especially on the line. Because on the line you're essentially wrestling another guy with the goal of not going to the ground. Every play. So as far as like leverage, hand placement, using your body and your momentum, their momentum to your advantage, I can see wrestling being extremely valuable to other sports. So, do you see like any really commonalities that you see as far as like maybe these athletes tend to do well wrestling, or wrestlers also tend to do well in these?
Well, I mean, I would say the easiest parallel to draw is, wrestling to football, because a lot of the aspect, I mean, when you're trying to teach, even in the wrestling room, when you're trying to teach somebody the fundamentals of a double leg takedown, which is essentially you lower your level and you're double leg, you're grabbing two legs, driving through your opponent. I mean, the term I will use is, when I can tell they're not getting it, I was like, just tackle them. Tackle. That's what you're doing. You're tackling them, and so you can talk down to that level, and so when you're going, and now you see the way tackling is being taught, not by everybody, but in some circles in football, it is very the focus is on legs. You want to get low, get your head across, get the legs, and I mean I've even seen like you kind of dip and roll the shoulder and all that, but that's wrestling. I mean, that's wrestling, and that's just understanding that. And I'm coaching helping coach a 5th and 6th grade football team right now, and like I was just talking about, everything happens up here, and it's like you got to get kids to understand, or people to understand that you got to lower your level, you got to get your shoulders down, you got to get you got to bring your hips down, and I think those are kind of the fundamentals that wrestling really helps instill, because you can't get away with being high. Like, so so when you're playing in the trenches, when you're on the offensive line or defensive line, you understand when you come out of that stance, there's no value into popping up. You're still down here, and own that territory that you already have. And then you mentioned leverage, you mentioned balance. Balance is going to be a big thing where, you're not crossing your feet. You're not crossing your feet. You're staying, just staying strong there, but also understanding angles, understanding how you can get an angle on somebody. And once you get the slightest angle, they're so much easier to push or to, swim out of or to tackle. So, I mean, those are some of the aspects of it. So I would say football's the easiest parallel to be like, yeah, I can see the translations between two of those, like, and there's a lot of guys in the NFL that have wrestling backgrounds, and I've heard them all comment on how much it benefited them. Ray Lewis to be probably the prime example of that. But yeah, I'm trying. The one sport it just doesn't translate to is basketball. Like, that's why they're both winter sports. Basketball guys over here, wrestlers over here. Okay, there's no, like a joke with some of the coaches at ECS. It's like, don't worry, we're not competing for the same pool of athletes. It's totally different. So yeah.
Wrestling's known for its pretty intensive conditioning.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
man, just kind of share about that. Like, why is that? Why is it necessary? What are some like things that y'all do, and what are some of kind of the benefits of taking?
I would say one of the reasons is I kind of talked about that chip on our shoulder. It's like because we're going to be the hardest working guys on campus. Like that, you will not be outworked. You don't want to be worked out by basketball team, football team, don't matter, and they definitely don't want to be outworked by a team across town. So I think that is just part of that. There's just this mentality and culture behind. It's like we're just going to work hard. I don't even know if it's a good idea, but we're doing it. So that is really the catalyst for it. But beyond that, one of the greatest compliments you can be paid as a wrestling coach is Kyle Story at ECS. I think he was being sincere, but two of his lacrosse players wrestled for me this past year, Walker McKaig and Cooper Dye. They both graduated, and they came into lacrosse season, winter sport wrestling, going into lacrosse in the spring in fantastic shape. And he commented, he's like, man, what do you do to get them in such good shape? And it's like, man, I'm just scratching the surface on anything we are attempting to do conditioning wise, because we are a young program and you're growing it and we're just trying to figure, I'm just trying to get space. I'm in that battle, but blessed to have the space that we have. But really just the act of what they did consistently was just wrestle. And we were talking off air about like your experience in jiu-jitsu, and now, 30 seconds of pushing another human being and resisting and pulling and just doing that and going back. There's a reason people wrestle high and stay high, because it's easier. Yeah. And you start, dropping your hips, bending your knees, and trying to carry your weight that way, your energy level gets zapped real quick. And so the mere act of wrestling and being in, and there is some kind of adrenaline dump that occurs when you're just, you're in a battle, you're in hand-to-hand combat, and there's something to that. I think that ups that level. So the act of wrestling itself is a fantastic conditioning device, but also because of you're aware of how taxing that is, you got to do more. And you have a whole phalanx of assault bikes out there, and I mean that's I lived on those in my 2 years at UTC, and you got in running, you're just going to do it. If there's stairs involved, you're on them. And if you throw somebody on your back, that's probably going to be a part of the conditioning and training too. So you do it because if you want to be successful when you're doing a 6-minute high school match and prepared for a 7-minute college match, you can't not do it. Otherwise, you're going to be wasted pretty quickly, and then it's like, all right, you're wasting your own time at that rate. So if you got to be well conditioned. Well, I think and I'll go ahead and just temper this with some honesty. Like I said, we're kind of in our infant stages. This is not, what we're doing, implementing at ECS in my wildest dreams. This is where we're going to go at some point in time. But we'll have, you will have a track workout where you're just running 100, you can go 100 meter sprints. Sometimes we will run 400 meter sprints, just out running. You'll have, exercise bike workouts where you're on an assault bike like you have, and you're just going in 1 minute bursts, and you're just trying to max out, and you're just trying to go full, as hard as you can go. If we'll do hill runs, reflecting on my time at UT Chattanooga, I just remembered we'd go on, of course my memory is what it is. It's like 20 years ago. It's like, my gosh, but I can't believe it's been that long. But, and nonetheless, there was a 3/4 mile incline that we'd hit up regularly, and we'd go out there, and we'd go up one time and jog back down, go up another time, jog back down, and then next time we came to the base of the hill, the guy, I was never in the lead. I wasn't bad, but we had these like 125 and 133 pounders that were always like, in the front. And it's like, must be nice, being tiny. But anyways, then I'd see our 125 and 133, our 125 was on our 133's back, like walking up the hill. I'm like, I guess we're doing that now. All right. So, then I would, I was 174 and I'd jump on our 184's back and vice versa. And then we'd go, those are weight classes, by the way. And so that's the kind of stuff. And there's a rhythm to it in season where you're going through that, where you are preparing for, the flow of let's just do a high school season. You really want to start that ascent toward the state championship in February. So, you start conditioning. You really coming out of Thanksgiving, you start really conditioning hard. You keep that conditioning pace through Christmas, and then you'll taper a little bit. You're kind of set at that point after the new year. Taper a little bit, maintain the conditioning level you have, and then prepare for the state championship run in February.
So it sounds like a lot of that conditioning stuff is like primarily lower body focused.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll say weight. We would do a weight training session, but those would be separate. And I wouldn't even. I guess it probably is conditioning, but we didn't consider that conditioning. You're like, all right, we're here for our 6 a.m. workout. We'd work, do our weight routine, which was a lot of circuit sets. So we would do a lot of. So it was mainly lower weight, but a lot of reps. And so, yeah, we did do that. That would be kind of the morning. Then the afternoon would be our practice, and then we would go into. We would always, I'm trying to think. Yeah, we would do conditioning built into practice, and then there was off season, kind of conditioning that we'd go through.
In a match, if you're well conditioned, what are you feeling, if anything, fatigue wise at the end of the match? And then if you're not in good conditioning, what's typical fatigue wise that you're feeling?
You just feel like your body is just broken down. And I know that's a vague description, but you're just, when your body's depleted and, your muscles are strained. And I guess that's when you're not in good condition. And I'll just say that was kind of the difference in high school. Every match, you'd get, hey, I'd pin a guy in pretty quick, or you'd have these opportunities. In college, it's just every match is hard. And to be frank, I was the easy match for some of when I was wrestling Oklahoma State. He saw UT Chattanooga on his tournament bracket and was like, all right, got that guy, okay. But outside of that, in conference competition. And that, by the way, that's not our representative. All UTC wrestlers. We had all Americans. We had some studs. Okay, we had some studs. But I was all right. But in conference competition, you're mentally prepared. Every match is going to be hard. It's probably going 7 minutes, and it's going to be close. There is no one way or another. And so your body just feels fatigued, usually kind of this burning in your throat because you're just sucking air, and even I'll just say this. I mean, even when you're in good shape, it's you still feel. I'm trying to remember. Well, did I ever feel like? No. Even when you're in good shape, it still hurts, and it's just like you're just trusting. The other guy hurts worse than me, and I had a little more than he did.
So each match can last up to 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Always go to 6 minutes at some point as you score so many points?
Okay, like a pin, or we would say a fall, that's equivalent to a KO. Not a literal knockout, but that just means you get a guy's shoulder blades flat on the mat, and it's not a 1, 2, 3. It's a up. That's it. They tap the mat. It's over. And so if you're able to, you win right then and there. You could be down. You could be down by points. And we've seen this happen tons of times. Not often, but it happens. You're going to be up by 10 points, and then dude, something fluky happens, you get put on your back, and that's it. The other guy wins. And so that's an aspect of the sport that is that I think is fun. It's like, you're never really out of it, even at those moments. But so there's point criteria that breaks down. You get 2 points for a takedown, 1 point for an escape, which I think the NCAA just did something smart and amended that. But still at the high school level, it's 2 points takedown, which is establishing control. And I like to point this out anytime I talk about wrestling. We talk about life lessons and everything. You hear the adage, life, or sports teaches you, hey, when you get knocked down, you get back up. And wrestling, that's not, when you get knocked down, you got to find a way up. Like, that guy has no interest in letting you up. So, and that's life. Like, when things come around in life that knock you down, you don't get to pop right back up. You have to find a way up and find your way. And I think that's another thing that wrestling, just from the mental standpoint of it, is teaches, like, all right, your work's just beginning. Now you got to start finding your way up and get an escape. And if you do get an escape, you get 1 point. And then you get a guy on their back, you get 3 points or 3 to 4 points. And then or if you hold them there long enough, you get the pin. So, yeah.
Okay, so essentially you win the match by scoring more points or by getting someone on their back
And getting the pin. Yeah.
And then how many matches would you do, like, at a tournament?
Tournaments can be, like, if you're in a double elimination tournament, which would have like a consolation bracket, you're going to be going in, you're probably going to get in the last probably 6 matches in a weekend. And there's, you'll probably have 3 one day, 3 another, or 2 one day, 4. It usually flows like 2 on Friday, 4 on Saturday, something to that effect. If you keep winning and advancing, there's that's the hard part. That is kind of a hard part when you're kind of working with these athletes. You go to these tournaments, you sit in the gym for hours. They lose 2 matches, and you're like, all right, that's it, we're done. And they're kind of like, and they need that's the kind of the irony of it. They need more time. They want more time in competing to get better, and then it's like that's all they get. And so it is kind of frustrating that way. So you want to try to embrace as many opportunities to compete as possible.
How many? What's the time difference between a match?
Oh man, you're gonna get a lot of wrestling parents upset because you got in a perfect world. You would have probably 2 to 3 hours between matches. That'd be a nice flow. You can wrestle. Tournaments will start. Man, this is not going to be a good advertisement for wrestling. I'm teasing, but a tournament. I'm just being honest. A tournament will start depending on your weight class and how your bracket breaks down. You may sit around and wait like 3 hours for your first match. And then you'll sit around and wait. You'll wait another 3 or 4 hours for your next match. And then once it starts whittling down, and then you get to the round of 16 or round of 8, it moves a little bit quicker. But I will say this in my conversations with swim families, track families, that is consistent with individual sports. The individual sports is you hurry up and wait, and you're sitting a lot. So bring the appropriate reading material. But for the athletes, it is that's a struggle because you're amped up, you're ready to go, and then you're waiting, and you want to compete, and that can be a point of frustration.
Is there ever a situation where, like, it's been like back-to-back matches, 30 minutes?
Okay, there is in some youth tournaments where there's different rules. There are, but TSSAA is I believe it's a 45-minute. You have to have a 45-minute wait period minimum between matches, and that's very wise. I mean because the strain of wrestling a match and then turning around and having to wrestle again,
especially for the person who's fresh.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are the 2 different types of wrestling?
Are you talking about freestyle and Greco?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what we got in the high school and even NCAA, that's what we would call folk style. The rest of the world would not call it anything because I think we may be the only ones that do it. I don't know. But folk style wrestling is I'm trying to find just a different point system. And you would even get into, and I'm not really schooled enough to really speak about it and truly intelligently, but it is you would have a different approach. Whereas freestyle wrestling looks more like folk style, but the scoring system is so different. You would implement a different strategy. It's in the international level. You got 3 and 3. They do 2 3-minute matches, whereas or periods. Whereas in high school it's 2 3-minute periods. So 2 2 2. Folk style though, it's all full body. Whereas Greco-Roman, you'll see it's all upper body. You can't have any attacks below the waist. So you can't single leg, double leg. I mentioned earlier, that doesn't happen. You can't do it. So everything's up bottom. So you're working underhooks, working the head, those kind of things. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
You're still trying to take people down.
Yeah.
You just cannot engage the lower body.
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then in the Olympics, they're doing freestyle.
It's freestyle and Greco. Yeah.
So is it a tough transition for an American wrestler who's done folk style to try to transition to?
Man, you're asking all these questions that a true wrestling community have been debating these things for Here's what I'll say. I would say if we're go to Russia, or Iran, who have best elite international wrestling, and they do freestyle their whole lives, and so they have a lot of success. So you could, be lured into saying, well, why don't we just do freestyle all the time? All I know is we've had that. Some have called this in American wrestling a golden era. We've had just a lot of success. And so all of those guys are transitioning from college folk style while doing freestyle the whole it's their off season's freestyle. They're in season for wrestling is folk style. But they spend their off season doing freestyle, which again, it's just a different approach, but it's pretty much the same. Yeah, same techniques. It's not like you're getting your body to do anything differently. It's just you got to be. It's just different approach to how you score and moves that you would maybe take risks on. So that's a great question, and what it boils down to is. Maybe a decade ago, we would have said, hey, we may need to really consider doing that. Meanwhile, the last 10 years of USA wrestling has shown, I think we're up for it. The last Olympics we had 2 gold medalists. We had David Taylor, gold medalist, stud from Penn State. And then we had Gable Stevenson, who's incredible, just an incredible athlete. And he was, won NCAA championships as a folk style wrestler for Minnesota, transitioned to freestyle internationally, competed in his first Olympics and won gold. And then even before that, Kyle Snyder and Jordan Burroughs and on and on. So there's been a lot of success. I don't know what the benefit, I don't know if there's a benefit. What I would wonder is is there a benefit to folk style that maybe better equips them for that transition, or maybe breaks up the monotony of it, so you're not always just doing freestyle, so you do have this different approach mentally to things, and you're thinking outside of the box, that maybe those freestyle guys, freestyle purists are oh, maybe I need to consider that. So I don't know.
So weight cutting is obviously something that occurs in wrestling. So kind of speak to that and how to do that safely at the high school, middle school level, how y'all approach it, how you communicate it to kids and parents, and just what can people be aware of?
I think there does need to be just transparency in it. And I'll say this, I think there's a lot of, and this is my wrestling apologist, I'm putting on my wrestling apologist cap. I think there is a lot of misinformation necessarily about weight cutting with wrestling. That's the number one question you get asked. You get 2 questions. Do you have cauliflower ear? Yes, I do. And you get asked, oh man, tell me about weight cutting. And every wrestler has their weight cut story. It's always and it's the fish you caught. It's always you add 10 pounds every fight. Man, I had to cut 30 pounds one time. It's so that happens. I think there are rules in place now at the state and or at the state levels, and even NCAA, where they mitigate the risks. And really what they do, they're mitigating the incentives of cutting weight, and so it used to be back in the day, you would you would do weigh-ins the night before. Yeah. And so that incentivized guys like just cutting an insane amount of weight. They try to cut 20 pounds for a competition because they felt like they could rehydrate and get prepared for the competition the next day. So they changed that rule to now weigh-ins are an hour before competition. So you just realize, hey, if you come in, you cut that 20 pounds, you're done. Like, you're toast at that point. So what I'll say is, and so, yeah, weight cutting happens. Sometimes it is to the benefit of an athlete. Yeah, like cut 5 pounds to make that lower weight class where you're stronger. That's reasonable. And once you understand the science of water weight and really what you're doing, it's not that big. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And don't get me wrong, there's also extremes to that, and when you're into that. What I would like to say is the nutritional benefits and the health and fitness benefits that I gained from wrestling because of weight management and being aware, that's the kind of stuff that you carry with you for a lifetime. And so you're just aware of, oh, there's a consequence if I want to eat that. Or there's a consequence, like, you understand there's a mathematical equation going on when you consume that amount of calories and, how it's going to affect your body. And so that's, to me, again, not a day goes by where I'm not like making, and maybe I'm a psychopath, I don't know. But I think it's healthy to be like, I don't need that. Or if I do get that, I know what I'm getting myself into, and I probably need to, if I'm making that deposit, I need to withdraw something later. So yeah.
Hey, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Man, this was a lot of fun. I looked at my clock. I was like, it's like that. But a lot of fun, and thanks for letting me come on and talk about wrestling and share. And yeah, this has been a blast, David. Thank you.
NBS Fitness Radio out.
Thank you for listening to NBS Fitness Radio. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, follow us on social media, and check out our website at www.nbsfitness.net. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more NBS Fitness Radio.